Welcome to the Man Room.
Welcome to the Man Room.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into the Man Room. Thank you for joining me for episode 18. I am your host, Marcus Bridges. And as always, you can find us every place you listen to podcasts and even on YouTube and for some reason, TikTok. Joining me today in the Man Room, somebody I'm very excited to get to catch up with, somebody I haven't seen for 15 plus years for sure. A very accomplished individual. He's a filmmaker with things like The Last Blockbuster on Netflix to his credit, and also Pick It Up, Ska in the 90s. And I also know him from a little band from Eugene back in the day called Alter Ego. Please welcome to the Man Room, Taylor Morden. Thanks for joining me, dude. Hey, look at that. I already made an error. So unmuted your mic. Thanks for joining me.
We can start over if you want.
No, it's all good, man. I'm going to keep this fresh and loose. I really appreciate you joining me today. Super glad to actually have you in studio. I know you're freshly back in Eugene. And how's everything going, dude?
It's going pretty good. Pretty good. I've only been back here for a few weeks, so I'm still getting settled and relearning the lay of the land.
Yeah.
I spent plenty of time here, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
And the town is pretty different, I'm learning.
I mean, especially if you spend a lot of time down in that campus area. It hasn't grown out at all, but it's grown straight up. And I mean, a lot of those old party houses that used to get thrashed during live shows aren't there anymore. So
Right. Yeah. And I keep looking for things that I'm missing, and then just driving around, and some places are exactly the same, like no one, I can't believe it's been 20 years. No one fixed up that old crappy house, but then some places are gone, and some places are like you said, 8 stories tall now when they used to be 2.
Yep. A bunch of work down there at 5th Street. It's actually starting to look really nice down there. New Nike stores if we needed one of those,
I was wondering where I was going to get my Air Jordans. Is that a Nike shoe?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I've got the flat-soled skate shoes on too. So you got some Adidas. Yeah. I'm not really a Nike guy myself, so I guess you could say I live in the way wrong place. But
Yeah, same. I mean, I'm a bad U of O alumni, I guess.
Well, U of O alumni for sure. Now, did you study film in college?
No, to my knowledge, there wasn't really a film program when I was there. I took a couple of movie classes, but we just watched movies and wrote papers on them,
right.
They were to get credits, to get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
But I got my degree in digital arts.
Okay.
I did do a little bit of video production when I was there. Not even a full class of it, but this term in multimedia class, we're going to do a video. So
right.
I did those, but no film classes per se. I hear they have a program now.
Right, I'm sure they do. I mean, great. Every liberal arts school should at this point. If you're not, you're kind of behind the times, to say the least, right?
Right. I mean, the technology has come so far, and everybody has a 4K camera in their pocket.
Yeah.
It's crazy to not have a curriculum around that, and it's more important than, a lot of the classes we took. You don't need math anymore. The people who told us we wouldn't have a calculator in our pocket all the time were dead wrong.
Way more than a calculator. I have a better computer than I learned on when you were telling me that in high school,
Yes. Yes.
But, well, I have to say, man, the quality of your films speak for themselves. Of course, everybody and their dog has seen The Last Blockbuster. Congratulations on that. Personally, I have to say, when it came out, I didn't know that you were behind it, first of all, when it came out, and so I didn't make the connection, and I immediately would have been right to it. What I thought, when my wife's like, hey, you want to watch it? And I was like, I grew up with video stores, but not really Blockbuster, and so it's not like and then I watched it, and then I was like, no, this is just video stores in general. If you feel that, if you were a part of that generation, this documentary is amazing, and it will make you want to travel to Bend to stand in front of the very last Blockbuster on Earth, man. So congratulations. Awesome work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, people have been really digging it. But that was, to your point about it being about all video stores, that was a big deal for me because, I grew up out on the Mackenzie River. We didn't have a video store at all, let alone a Blockbuster. And, I would rent videos at the gas station
Right.
down the street, which still holds that same like nostalgia for me of like going to the gas station, trading in my cans for the deposit to go rent a VHS tape. And it has nothing to do with Blockbuster, but it's that feeling and that thing that we're all kind of missing now that we forgot to miss because it faded out so gradually over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Like it was a thing we did every weekend. When you and I were in college, like Blockbuster was just part of life.
Right. It was cheap fun.
Yeah.
It was something that you could go and do as a college student, even, with a few bucks in your pocket or whatever you drug out of the couch that week, and for me, I actually worked at a video store in high school for and I know that I join probably a ton of people that you've talked to because it's a great high school job. I can actually comfortably say that video store that I worked at, it's different owners now, but it's still up and running. It was a video store, you bake pizza, and smoothie shop. And so, we had the Pepsi cooler and stuff like that too, and a few, little snacks. And it's all I was doing was slanging pizza and videos to all my friends most summer nights, so super nostalgic. And I was even talking about it with my wife. We've been together for, I think 13 years. If that's wrong, she might have words, but that's obviously, I know how long we've been married, but the whole like when we got together thing was blurry. But I do remember once in Independence, Oregon, she went to Western, so we went over to Independence to Hollywood Video, and that was like one of our very first dates. And we took a movie back to her dorm room, and like, yeah, man, same thing that's talked about throughout the entire documentary: the popcorn and the and the smell. The smell was something that you guys brought out so well, and it really is just awesome. And I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind,
Sure.
that I've always wondered from like a technical standpoint. And first of all, Lauren Lapkus, love her so much. That was a great choice for narration. The Earliest Show on YouTube, if you've never seen it, it's amazing. It's like a short form thing that they did as like newscasters, and her co-anchor is going through a breakup. And each episode is named after a different part of like the grief process, like bargaining and depression and everything. And they have like a full news set and everything. I think it was maybe Funny or Die that did it or something like that. So it's really, really well produced, but great choice there. I don't know if that's 100% your choice or if you sought her out, but that was amazing. Love her. Are you the guy that's I know you're the director, so this is probably a stupid question, but just, humor me because I'm naive about the process.
Yeah.
Are you the guy that's asking the questions for all of the interviewees in the show?
Yeah, for the most part. The way we did it, I had a filmmaking partner on this one, and he's like writer, producer, and I'm director in the credits, but we both did a lot of the jobs. And for the most part, when there was a interview, he would be monitoring the cameras and I would be asking the questions. A few times, if I couldn't make it, he would go and do the interviews without me. Like he did the New York ones and I did some of the LA ones without him, and it evened out. So the ones you hear in the movie where you hear us off camera, it's me. I think there's like 4 and it's me for 3 of them and it's him for the other one, but pretty much.
For the most part,
yeah.
I found myself, as if I was asking the questions while watching it kind of in your voice. So it's like I was hearing your voice. So I've always wondered that, just as somebody who's, I've done some various shorts films and stuff like that when I was working for the radio station, but those things were always like 3 dudes and a camera. Like nobody was ever really credited with anything. And so, everybody just kind of stood there and acted out whatever they could.
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of how we did this. Like the credits were an afterthought, but like
really,
there were 2 of us really just making it and setting up cameras and microphones and just doing it however we could. And it was a 4-year process.
Wow.
So, there would be weeks when I was off because I was making the ska doc at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I wasn't at some of the Blockbuster interviews, is because I was,
already involved
in Orange County with Real Big Fish doing something else.
Darn it.
That day. So it was still very DIY and very like cobbled together. And I still don't know like the difference between a grip and a gaffer or a best boy. And these are all film jobs that have credits. And I think there are grips credited in our movie. I don't know what the grip does.
Well, it's good to know. And I mean, it should be, for people listening, it should be, a little relaxing to hear that, like, you don't have to be a huge pro that's got, decades of experience doing Hollywood movies to make a kick-ass film like you guys did. And not only that one, I have all sorts. I got a page full of notes on Pick It Up too, because of my love for at least I'm a punk rocker at heart, but I got a lot of ska in my blood too from being at those punk rock shows. So we'll get to that. And actually, I feel bad because this is something that I do on every single show, but I was so excited to talk to you that I just jumped right over one thing. If anybody's wondering what we're drinking today, I'd like to feature that. Taylor actually suggested we grab some CBD drink, and I got some Albus Blood Orange Cranberry CBD Elixir, and it is amazing. Have you tried it yet?
I haven't tried it yet. I was
okay.
waiting for permission. I don't know how this
I'm sorry.
works.
Yeah, no, I'm a bad host.
I'm going to try it right now.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, that is good.
Right?
That's nice.
We each have 64 ounces of it, so if we're incredibly relaxed by the time this is over, it's because the elixir is so damn good. I got that down at the filling station. It's down here at the end of the road, and she poured me a small glass of it while she filled my growlers as just like a sample, and I almost just stayed there until you came here, to tell you the truth. So great stuff from Albus. Check that stuff out. Getting back into it, I just wanted to, and I'm sorry I didn't ever give you permission to drink. There's also water there if you need water. So try to be a good host, but I'm like I said, I'm kind of excited, so I'm glossing over a bunch of stuff. One of my things I wrote down here, what the fuck was Lloyd Kaufman's problem? Good Lord, man. That was like, what was it, 112 seconds or something of Lloyd Kaufman?
Yeah, and that's all we could use. We did a 90-minute interview, and that's, and we had to bleep even some of that out after the fact because not for language, but for we don't want to get sued because of some of the stuff he said. And he was, he's somebody I looked up to for most of my life because as a teenager, you watch the Toxic Avenger and Sergeant Kabuki Man and these crazy trauma movies that he is the genius behind. He is trauma. And they were just awesome. They were the coolest movies. They're terrible, but as a kid, you don't know. At least I didn't know that movies could be bad. It took me all the way up until the 10th time seeing Star Wars Episode 1 before I knew movies could be bad.
Right.
I just thought all movies are great and fun, and there's no difference between the Toxic Avenger and Batman Returns. They're the same quality of movie. I didn't know. But, I thought these were amazing movies. And then later, in college and stuff, those movies came out on DVD, and he had all these making of, documentaries where you could see, and that's when I learned these were made for no money, just crazy indie, the special effects are just a guy with a bucket of blood dumping it just off camera, that kind of thing. And that, coming from punk rock like you, the DIY kind of just making stuff really appeals to me.
Yeah.
And so I was a big fan of Trauma, and it was a big deal. I was in New York to shoot with the Slackers for the ska doc, and somebody canceled, so we had a day off. And Lloyd Kaufman had been on our list of we should reach out to Lloyd. I think he'd be interesting from the indie perspective. And we emailed the office or called the office, I forget. And on a day's notice was is Lloyd Kaufman maybe available tomorrow in New York? And we're maybe. But I was we'd really like it. And he finally kind of reluctantly agreed that we could come to his house and film this interview. And we did. And he was the nicest, sweetest old dude, just in this weird, fancy New York apartment. It's really fancy, but the art is the Toxic Avenger painted nicely.
I noticed that.
It's very if a fancy old dude was into trashy 80s movies.
Yeah.
And he was super nice and kind, and we were talking about filmmaking and how, because we were making a low budget movie in front of him.
Yeah, he can relate.
He can relate, and we bonded. And then the second we turned the cameras on, he snaps into that character of this cranky old guy who hates everything. The stuff you see in the movie, that came out of nowhere. I was legitimately shocked how mean he was to me.
Yeah,
in that moment, because we had been hanging out for an hour, just like shooting the shit, and he's totally fine. And then the camera turns on, and he snaps into. That's his character, is cranky Uncle Lloyd.
Gotcha.
And he never broke that while the cameras were on, and then we turned the cameras off, and he's like super sweet again, and he signed a Toxic Avenger poster for me. I have it up in my bathroom. It's one of those weird things where he is very conscious of what his brand is. And he knew we were making a movie about Blockbuster, and he wants to be known as the guy who hates Blockbuster.
Okay. He's like the only one.
It's great. Yeah, we thought we would have a lot. We thought, because of the way they put the mom and pop stores out of business, we thought, half the people are going to hate Blockbuster. We're going to talk to Kevin Smith, and he's going to be like, video stores are great, but Blockbuster is the worst. As it turns out, I think enough time has passed, and everybody's just like, they were fine, And so we didn't get that. And so Lloyd was the only person who gave us that kind of negative anti-corporate thing, which we really needed.
Right.
Because it's not all pleasant. Blockbuster Video was the Walmart of,
video stores, yeah.
Video stores coming into small towns, putting the local store out of business. The one that is the last Blockbuster, that's what happened to them.
Yep.
They were forced to become a Blockbuster. So we felt like we really needed that angry kind of rebuttal, and Lloyd was the only one who gave it to us.
Yeah, and he gave it to you in spades, too. Yes. If you have not seen it, you need to go check out The Last Blockbuster on Netflix. I'm totally aware that 99% of the people that are listening to this have already seen it, and I mean, when I saw him do that, I was wondering if it was a character, but the things that he had to say about, like, the anti-corporate, and it kind of hit home, and you're right, because that is part of the larger story. So it was good to hear it, but it's also at the same time, I mean, was he privy to any money whatsoever from his movies ever being in a Blockbuster? Like, did he ever get any of the chunk of any of that revenue?
Yeah. So the way it worked, and he sort of starts to explain this in the movie, but he gets derailed by his own whatever. But,
right.
But there were two types of Blockbusters. There were the corporate stores and the franchises. Corporate stores would not carry any of his movies.
Okay.
It was just like no, they didn't get to pick their own movie.
Just a sweeping policy.
Yeah. I mean, nobody at the store. You couldn't go in and bring a movie and say, would you carry this movie? They'd say, like, we get our movies from corporate.
Right.
It says buy 200 copies of Titanic. We buy 200 copies of Titanic. Heck, they just show up.
Right.
But the franchises were different. And I found this fascinating. We found this out kind of talking to people as we went, but they were so different that they would have totally different movies in different neighborhoods, like especially in New York. Like in the Jewish neighborhoods, they would have way more Woody Allen movies and other things, and in the black neighborhoods, they would have the more Eddie Murphy movies or whatever.
Lots of Spike Lee and stuff like that.
Lots of Spike Lee.
Yeah.
And that way, it was catering to their customer base geographically. But the corporate stores weren't like that. So he did have Troma movies in franchise stores where the managers were cool with him. But the way it worked back then for indies is they just bought it. So if they bought 10 copies of one of his Troma movies, he got the money for 10 sales.
Gotcha.
It's not like,
recurring.
We talk about revenue share in the movie, which is what the studios did with Blockbuster. But that was a specific deal with the big studios where they would get, 50% of the rental money. But the reason they did that is because they gave them the movie for free in the first place.
Right.
Which Troma never had deals like that. So
yeah.
It was never a big amount of money, but when you're making indie movies, it never is a big amount of money.
Right.
From any individual sale. Like right now, the biggest rental chain is Redbox. We did not get our movies into Redbox, which is funny.
It's
fitting,
quite funny.
We're on Netflix instead, which is also funny. But, there's something like 30,000 Redboxes out there. So if they carry your movie, you might make a chunk of change.
Right.
But they're buying their DVDs for $2 a piece or something.
Sure.
Tops. And they cost you $1.50 to make. So it's not like, and that's kind of how it was with Blockbuster when there were a ton of them is they would get these bulk discounts. So the indie movies that didn't have the revenue share would make some money, but it wasn't
nearly as much. Yeah. Copy. How high was Doug Benson when you had him?
Which time?
when you guys do the kind of the shots of him like walking in there the first time, and when he takes his glasses off and looks around, like I've actually interviewed Doug Benson for a radio show I've done in the past, and he was just absolutely blazed out of his mind and hilarious. Right, that's Doug Benson's brand, and he plays it better than anybody ever could.
Oh yeah.
But I just being in a recreationally legal state, I'm sure that Doug just went buck wild when he got to Bend. So
yeah, I mean he's a fan of Oregon in general.
Yep, done a bunch of 420 shows here.
Lots of 420 shows in Eugene and Portland, and he actually, because we asked everybody we interviewed if they wanted to come to the store, we would fly them in and they could do that bit. Basically, we needed somebody to be our audience proxy for checking out this last store.
Right.
He was the only one who was on board, but not only that, he was so excited about it. He booked his own flight, his own hotel. He just told us when he was coming.
That's awesome.
And, I mean, to the question of how high was he, I don't...
15?
I've heard his Getting Doug with High podcast. He wasn't that high, but he was probably like Doug Loves Movies level high.
Okay, gotcha. That's a great scale to put it on.
Yeah.
I love the dude. He's always been, he always is just, it doesn't ever strike me as a celebrity. Every time I've talked to him, he comes off as just as regular of a dude as there is. And, brilliant with his comedy and everything like that too. I was super happy to see him in the documentary. You also got Ron Funches, who is an Oregon comedian, who was absolutely hilarious. And what his story that he told about going out and renting all of the GameCube games right before the Blockbuster went out. Man, I know so many people that have said to me since this has all happened, like, man, I can't believe I didn't think of that. It was a really good idea.
Such a good idea. I didn't think of it either. I guess I was too by the books.
Honest.
It never occurred to me that once they went out of business, those late fees would go away.
Right.
Like just rack them up. Because I don't know. I was worried would that be on my credit report? But of course not.
No.
Of course not. When Blockbuster goes away. They're not coming after anybody.
Right.
For late fees, and whoever keeps the most movies wins.
And I guess it was Ron Funches, right?
It was Ron. And video games were the best because, movies were like $20, but video games were $50, $60.
Yep. And they've stayed that way. I mean, the value has just kind of steadily increased over our lifetime. I remember in high school, it was like $40 for an N64 game or something like that, and now here we are years later with technology that we never even dreamed of, and games are only $60. I feel like we actually have it pretty good in the gaming world.
Yeah, inflation, I mean, it's not that bad in video games if you look at, college tuition or gas.
Yeah.
The things people have to pay for. Video games have gone up 10%.
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, look, I've got a buddy that animates video games for a very big company, and I really hope they're taking care of you. I imagine they're still making a ton of money because the games haven't gone up in price. So everything must be working on that side. Just keep it the way it is,
They're selling a lot more copies. Video games make more money than movies do.
That's crazy. And you see like a game like Grand Theft Auto, it's been out for like 8 years, and they're still turning over millions and millions of dollars every day just from the online platform, It really makes you wish you'd have thought twice about going into video game animation in college rather than studying radio, which was, still a thing. You could still study that when I was in college. So I guess I'll let that date me. And we will get to that because Taylor and I spent some time together and some pretty significant time when we were at the University of Oregon, and that's a whole other story. But I really wanted to focus first on the movies because, A, I enjoyed them so much, and B, I feel like you're like the king of nostalgic things. Like between the last Blockbuster and your other film, Pick It Up, Ska in the 90s, I just found myself wanting to listen to certain songs and have certain feelings and find certain things, which I'll get to. Of course, this was directed by you and produced by the great Ray Mastrogiovanni, somebody else that I was fortunate enough to share the stage with back in my college days. Last time I spoke to him actually was over Facebook Messenger, just at random. I saw him as like a mutual friend. One of the things that Facebook is actually good for, and there's few, But I just sent him a message, and he remembered me, which blew me away because who was I? But he told me that he was making this movie with you, and to tell you the truth, that completely slipped my mind. And then I saw it when it came out, and I saw his name on it. I love that guy, man. I was so happy to hear that you guys are working together. Tell me a little bit about Pick It Up Ska in the 90s.
Yeah, that's a music documentary about ska music. And Ray, actually, it was his idea. I did a Facebook post after I finished my first movie before that, which was about a band called The Refreshments. And then I had just come out, and I was asking people, what should my next movie be about? Because I'm not that creative. I just do the work. And Ray was like, do one about ska, you idiot. Because I'm still playing in ska bands at that time. Like, I have been playing. I'm a trumpet player, so there's not a lot of things. There's ska bands, and then there's like orchestra, which I was never good enough at. So I've been doing it now half my life in real bands, but I've been playing trumpet for 30 years. That's
wow.
a bummer. Getting old. But, it's been a huge part of my life, and so it was kind of a no-brainer, but it didn't occur to me as someone who makes music documentaries and nostalgia documentaries. And Ray was like, do one about ska music. And I had just done a movie about one band, and that was a lot of work. I'm like, how do you do one about the whole? There's so much to ska music. And also, I'm not well-versed enough. It has such a rich history.
Mm-hmm.
Goes back to Jamaica and then in England in the 70s and 80s with two-tone, that it was not my ska music.
Right.
So I said, what if we focused on the 90s, which was our generation of ska? Because there are already documentaries about Jamaican ska and two-tone, and they're great. And I've watched them to learn where ska came from.
Right.
But nobody had covered this, when it got real goofy and real mainstream and, like, was everywhere. And he was like, that's a great idea. It's a movie for us. And I said, okay, great. I'll make that, but you got to make it with me because it's going to be a lot of work. And he had never done anything with movies, but he was so connected in the ska world because he's been doing music professionally since college.
Right.
He's still producing ska music, really.
That's awesome.
In Japan and here. And so he had a lot of the connections. I had some too. But it was basically like, I'll do it if you do it with me kind of thing. And then we just did.
Hooked up and made a powerhouse, it sounds like, man.
Exactly.
Such a fun documentary. And, I was not aware until I saw the documentary what the history of ska was. I'd never even heard about it. And I think you guys do a great job kind of wrapping up the what brought it to the 90s. I thought that was really informational, and also the way that you kind of like animated some of it too, I thought was fun. So I like I said, just a great movie, not only if you're a ska fan. Like, you don't have to be skanking in the pit to every ska band just to like this documentary. This will remind you of a lot of those DVDs that used to come out with your bands, like your Take Off Your Pants and Jacket with Blink-182, and then they followed that up with like Harder, Faster, Faster, Harder, or whatever it was. I think Newfound Glory did one called It's All Downhill From Here. Sum 41, Does This Look Infected? These DVDs that came out is just like, yours is much more professionally made and much more well-produced, but it reminded me of, like, you're talking to bands about band stuff that only bands know about, backstage this and in the van that and on stage that, and that just melts me into a puddle, man. I almost, like, my wife got home, and I was rewatching it the other day, and she got home, and there was like 30, 40 minutes left, and she watched the last 40, and she hasn't seen it, and she's like, oh, man, I remember seeing this band and that band, and I was like, did you want to start it over while I cook dinner and we'll just watch it from the beginning and you can get, and she's like, yeah, I guess, but she totally did that for me. Tim Armstrong as the narrator, once again, just a slam dunk of a choice. His name immediately. It was the same thing with Lauren Lapkus in the last Blockbuster. It was like, hey, that's Tim Armstrong. Like, immediately I knew, and that means it's a great choice. Did you get to meet Tim Armstrong, interview him or anything?
Yeah, so he didn't want to be interviewed for the movie. He had just done an East Bay punk documentary, and for whatever reason, he's just like, I don't want to do on-camera interviews anymore, which broke my heart because I had been, from day one, I was like, we got to get Tim. He's like, Rancid had some of the biggest ska songs in the 90s. They're a punk band, but they had big, huge ska hits. And that band is 4 people. Tim Armstrong is the ska guy.
Right.
He's the guy who's like, we got to do ska. So he was like on my list from day one of like, we got to get to Tim. And I met him at Back to the Beach, which was a huge ska concert that happened while we were making the movie, which was very, stroke of good luck for us. Of like, oh, all these ska bands are going to be in one place at one time. We'll go there with cameras. I met him backstage. He was there with the Interrupters. And he was like kind of aloof, like, hey, will you be in our movie? He's like, oh yeah, I heard about that. Hit me up later. No contact information, by the way. Just like, yeah, hit me up later. Like, okay.
I'll look you up on Instagram.
I'll just yell into the void.
Right.
And that was it of like, well, I guess he doesn't want to do it. And then one day, 3 or 4 months later, I got this phone call out of the blue, unknown California number. And when you're making ska movies and Blockbuster movies, you have to answer every unknown call because you never know.
Right. Who's calling?
Like one of those is Doug Benson. One of those is Aaron Barrett from Real Big Fish. And then this one, I picked it up, and it was, I'm going to butcher this, was, hey, this is Tim from Rancid and Operation Ivy. And I knew it from, hey, this is Tim, right? Because his voice is so distinct.
He is the Tim.
That raspy voice. But he's like, from Rancid and Operation Ivy. Oh, okay.
Like, no, I'm just catching my breath. Just give me a second.
Oh, hi. And he said, I've been thinking about your project, and I'm going to stop doing the voice. I've been thinking about your project, and I was thinking, oh, great, he's going to be in the movie. This is going to be awesome. Because Operation Ivy, for those who don't know, are like the precursor to all of the third wave ska bands that we all listen to. They influenced everybody.
Yeah.
In California.
And everybody had that album, even if you weren't, and I think you guys touch on it in the movie.
Yeah.
It's like, even if you didn't like ska punk or anything, you had that Operation Ivy album. The only one.
And so I was really excited that he was going to maybe be in our movie. And he said, have you guys cast a narrator yet? And it was right when we were doing our casting, and we had offers out. I think Patton Oswalt would have been funny.
Yeah.
Oscar Isaac from the Star Wars franchise used to be in a ska band, so we were like in talks with his manager.
Okay.
Like, wouldn't it be funny if Poe Dameron was our narrator, and trying to get a name to help with distribution.
Sure.
But nobody was like signed. We were just talking to people, and I was like, well, not really. He's like, well, I want to audition. Oh, okay, Tim Armstrong, you would like to audition to narrate our ska movie. But basically, I was just like, well, you don't have to audition. Let me just check real quick with my producer, and I'll call you back. And I called Ray. I was like, it should be Tim Armstrong, right? He's like, yeah, it should be Tim Armstrong. And I called him back, and I was like, you got the job. And he said, great. I just want to like meet and like get a sense of what the project is about before I sign on. I don't know what that means. I live in Oregon, but yes, I will come to your studio in LA when tomorrow. Yeah, I'll be, okay, sure. So we set an appointment, and he legitimately like wanted to make sure I was legit.
Wow.
So he made me come to his studio, and we just hung out and talked about ska.
He was kind of quizzing you think?
Kind of. He just wanted to make sure it was like legit, and also I kept pushing the Operation Ivy thing, and I wanted to get access to like their old home movies and photos and all that stuff. So I knew that was like an angle too. Like if I go there, I can at least and maybe get him talking, and maybe he'll let us bring some cameras in and film some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it kind of worked out, but I went down there at his studio, met him, started talking about ska, looking through old Operation Ivy photos, and he's telling me, oh, that show was this crazy one, and then Green Day was there, and then we did this thing, and that one, and this one, oh, don't use that show, that was a bad show, look at how drunk I was, or whatever the things were. And we were just hanging out like that for a day, and he still didn't agree to do it. I went back to my friend's house. I was crashing on his couch, And he was like, okay, come back tomorrow and I forget what the thing was. I had to come back tomorrow for something. And he called me the next day and he's like, I can't do today. Can you do the next day? Meanwhile, I have flown down to LA for this. So I'm rescheduling my return flights, trying to figure this out. And it ended up being like 3 days later, he's finally free. And the man's like on a crazy schedule where he works and then he has to have a nap. And then he's
Rock stars, man.
like, you have to go because I'm going to take a nap. Okay.
All right. Sounds good,
Whatever.
Tim Armstrong.
Tim Armstrong from Rancid and Operation Ivy. Yeah, thank you. But I went back the next day. I come up to his studio. He's sitting outside with an acoustic guitar, just sitting, outside patio, leaning back. And I get there, and he's like, oh, hey. And he starts playing some songs. He's like, every song is better as a ska song. And he starts playing like old Motown songs and like 60s songs, ska. And we're like doing a sing-along, like it's a campfire. And I have to pinch myself. Like, is this a real moment? I'm hanging out with Tim Armstrong, and he's like, yeah, I think I'm going to do your movie. This is going to be great. We can record it here. My buddy Kevin will engineer it. Kevin Bavona from The Interrupters. No big deal.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so we're good. There's no contracts or anything with Tim Armstrong. It's just, we're good.
Based on your word.
Yeah. And you can use all that Operation Ivy stuff. And he took me around. He let me see, like, he still has the guitar, the Operation Ivy guitar. He's like, here, you want to play it? It's left-handed, so I can't play it.
Right.
Even if you wanted to. Holding it awkwardly, like, I'm touching rock and roll history. Punk rock history, that's as good as it gets.
Right.
That's Tim Armstrong's guitar from Operation Ivy and early Rancid. It's just amazing. And then to top it all off, at the end of that day, he's like, hey, do you want to meet Flea?
From Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Yes, Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. Apparently, Flea was at that studio recording trumpet for some movie soundtrack or something. So he just takes me in a room and he's like, hey, Flea.
Unbelievable, dude.
And we just talked about Fishbone for a while. But I'm hanging out with Tim Armstrong and Flea, talking about music, and like, that was my job that day.
That's amazing.
That's as good as it gets.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I mean, it's cool when I guess you see them in their normal environment and they just are acting like, not the people that they are on stage, not the people that they are on tour, but just a dude in his daily life. And it's cool that they kind of like took you in for that day and you got to like just hang out like Tim Armstrong hangs out. Like, I don't know that I would be able to keep a lid on it. Like, you seem like you played it really cool, and I hats off, because I get giddy around people, and I start to smile like an idiot, and I just, I think I would have ruined it. He would have been like, I'm not doing this guy's film if it was me.
It was tough. It was tough not to be like a giant fanboy.
Yeah.
And that happens to me a lot with these things, and I kind of have to develop this like ability to, in the moment, play it cool.
Right.
Like, but as soon as I left that day, I'm like, oh my God. I'm calling everybody I know. You wouldn't believe what just happened. You won't believe. And I'm not like a Red Hot Chili Peppers fan, really. I mean, I live in America and was alive in the 90s, so I'm aware of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But I am a huge Back to the Future fan. So when I see Flea, I'm like, Flea, man, I got to tell you, I loved you in Back to the Future too. And he looks up from his bass that he's playing bass while we're talking. No big deal. He looks up and he goes, oh, yeah, I was in that.
I guess once you do the soundtrack for Armageddon, everything else just kind of seems small, you know? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I love it. Well, one thing that you touched on in Pick It Up Ska in the 90s, and you already kind of mentioned this a little bit when we were talking about the last Blockbuster, but the DIY nature of ska, and I think it was Aaron from Real Big Fish is talking about how they would go down to Kinko's late at night and glue a bunch of stuff to a piece of paper and draw a couple funny pictures, and that was their flyer. And actually, you and I had a flyer, and I found a giant stack of them, and you're not going to believe this, but this was Thursday, December 1st at Agate Hall, we did a punk rock holiday bash.
Oh, yeah.
This was a free show, and I believe that you made these flyers.
If it's the one I'm thinking of with Jesse Caps, yep. Jesse Caps. You know, I just, this is amazing, by the way.
Keep them. I got plenty more I'll give you after the show.
I will. I'm building a new music studio, and I found a box of old flyers. I'm going to do like a wall art thing out of them, and I'll throw these in there. But God, that was such a good idea.
Yeah.
You know, like
that was a fun show.
Now in the world of YouTube and TikTok, and like everybody is a cover band and there's no new ideas and everything. But at that time, 20 years ago, to make all the local punk bands, and these were, you know, Capgun Suicide, who headlined, they were one of the biggest local punk bands at that time.
Yep.
To make them all do Christmas songs and do a Christmas show.
Yes. It was great.
For free on a college campus.
Pretty well attended, too, if I remember. I mean, it wasn't
well
sold out or anything because we didn't sell anything. But, yeah, it was, I really enjoyed it. I also enjoyed, we recorded a Christmas song with you out the McKenzie River.
Right. All the bands did.
Yeah. And
we basically made an EP that never
saw the light of day.
No, and I don't have those recordings. I don't know who does.
Well, you'll be glad to know one of the reasons that obviously we know each other is we shared the stage together a few different times, but also you were the guy that recorded and produced my college band 1 Point Stars album, and I have to tell you, dude, we've been very good stewards of the records because we've got the whole full-length album still. The entire band shares it all the time. We've got a slew of pictures. You actually looked at some pictures over there on the wall from one of our Wow Hall shows that I think maybe you guys played on that show with us. I'm not sure. But you were hugely instrumental in the Eugene music scene at the time, and I've been a part of it in and out. I did some radio, so obviously I got to do some local stuff, but I also had another band a few years later, I think like 2008-ish, 2009, and the music scene, in my humble opinion, was never anything close to what it was when we were in college back then during those powerhouse punk days. There were so many good punk and pop punk and ska bands that were coming through the area. You did a project called Eugene Rock Music, right? That was you?
Yeah, and again, it's all outdated now, but at the time, there wasn't a way, there weren't Facebook groups or, Instagram, whatevers. And so I did go to college for like web design and stuff, and I was making websites for a living.
Yeah.
I just did air quotes for the listeners. But so I made this website, and basically someone else had done a ska one, the Oregon Ska Pages, that just listed every band, how to get a hold of them, listen to their MP3s if they had them, shows, there was a calendar there that people could add to, which was cutting edge technology.
Oh yeah, there's nothing like it in 2004.
Yeah, I mean 2003, 4, yeah. And we gathered all these rock bands, and Eugene had such a big scene at that time. And I don't know, because I left, and I've heard from other people that it's been up and down since. But at that time, I mean, at the peak of Eugene Rock Music, we had the website. We had a comp that I just found a copy of that is
really
rad. It's got like 30 bands on it or something.
I don't know if we were on that or not.
I think you are.
Or yeah?
Because I made the comp.
Well, probably, yeah. It stands to reason.
And we had a monthly showcase at the Wow Hall.
Yep.
Where they let me, little old nobody, book an all-local night at what at the time was the biggest all-ages rock club in town. And they let us keep it at $5, all ages. And I think they gave us Friday nights once a month. It was amazing.
Yep. And you were able to do like different genre nights where there was like heavier nights or there was ska nights and punk nights and stuff. And those were the most well-attended shows that my band, 1 Point Star, ever played at, for sure. And there was, I felt like wasn't there some kind of element of like giving back to the Wow Hall too, like with that, or there was some kind of charity element there almost?
The Wow Hall's a nonprofit, and so we didn't make any money. Like the $5, and we would sell out some of these shows.
Yeah.
There were hundreds of people, so they were making some money that helped keep the Wow Hall going. And in exchange, we were cross promoting, and we got a night. It was an opportunity anyone who's ever played in a local band knows how hard it is to get on the good shows at the good club in your town. And the Wow Hall was the good club, and they would have the good shows, and the good shows would maybe have a local opener if you were lucky, maybe none. Like you're wearing a Lagwagon shirt, Lagwagon comes through. There's no local opener. The local opener is Guttermouth,
right?
Or or Pennywise or something. It's like crazy.
Yeah.
So the fact that we could have 4, sometimes 5 local bands at a legitimate club. Some of these bands never got to play the Wow Hall except these showcases. So
right.
That meant a lot to us, but it was never a money thing. The money all went to the Wow Hall.
Yeah.
Which is great.
It's great, and it's probably one of the reasons that it's still going today. I mean, and I've got some great memories of the Wow Hall. I actually was fortunate enough. I opened doing stand-up comedy for Brian Posehn there.
Nice.
Yeah, and also a great part in the last Blockbuster from Brian Posehn, the king of nerds, if you ask me. We actually had him in our radio studio, and we had a Nintendo 64 hooked up years past the Nintendo 64's time. And it would just run Mario Kart, and the only reason we did that was because in the early days of Twitch, we wanted to live stream, and they kept kicking us off the platform because we were doing a radio show and we weren't playing video games. And it's like, you see where it comes now, and they'll take anybody. Like, they'd love to have your radio show on Twitch now. So we hooked up that old Nintendo 64 to, like, a crappy 12-inch studio TV that we had on the wall, and Brian Posehn walks in, he's like, "Is that Mario Kart?" And we're just like, yeah, sat there and played Mario Kart for the whole time, do like a 5-minute radio spot with us, right back to Mario Kart.
I love it.
It was great. But, back to the Wow Hall, just some of the best memories I have as a musician are at that place. And not only being there playing on stage, feeling like I don't belong here because I've seen way too many awesome bands play, That was the only time I got to see No Use for a Name that wasn't at a Warped Tour, and I was close enough to touch Tony Sly, and every day I wish that I had because, I miss him more than certain dead relatives, and that's one of the reasons that Pick It Up Ska in the 90s, I think, was so, it hit me so hard right in the chest, is that, I saw some of these bands come through and play places like the Wow Hall, and the shows exactly how you described them in the film. Wild, fun, mosh pits, getting dropped on your head, picked up by 5 or 6 people and right back into it. All of a sudden, somebody's holding the shoe up because somebody lost one, It's that feeling. And, of course, we're sitting here just post-2020. None of us have really had that for, like, well over a year's time, and it's been too long. Do you have any shows that you're going to? Do you have anything booked that you're excited about?
It's been a really tough year for me, just like for most people, and I have not let myself get excited yet, because I got excited last year when things were going to open up and it was going to get back to normal, and you just get your heart broken of like, well, I guess I'll just get those tickets refunded for that thing I was gonna go to,
right? And
so I don't have my sights set on anything yet. I'm too, once bitten, twice shy.
I hear you.
I'm hesitant until it actually happens. I can't get my hopes up.
I hear you, man. I really do. The last show I went to, my wife bought us tickets, and we drove down to Sacramento for Punk and Drublick. We saw NoFX, Less Than Jake, Goldfinger, and Flogging Molly was that show at a beer fest. I mean, I couldn't have been more in my element, and it was really cool to see Less Than Jake and of course Goldfinger be a big part of the documentary. I thought it was funny. Remind me of the lead singer of Goldfinger's name. I always forget it.
John Feldman.
Thank you, John Feldman. I always have Darren Pfeiffer stuck in my head because of Wayne Gretzky, that song. So he kind of talks about, there's a part in the film where he talks about like some bands kind of, I don't think it was actually him. I feel like this was Aaron that was talking about bands kind of pushing their horn sections aside a little bit and kind of going more towards the mainstream. When I saw Goldfinger, it was just him. It was Cyrus Baluki from Newfound Glory on the drums, one of the guitar players from Story of the Year playing guitar, and then when they had songs that required the horn section, the guys from Less Than Jake came out and played the horn section. So it was amazing because it was like a super group on stage, but it was unlike the Goldfinger that I was used to for sure.
Yeah, Goldfinger is one of the many bands from the 90s that is really just the front man and whoever will play with him. The guy from Story of the Year is in Goldfinger now.
Okay.
Like, he's not a hired gun. And Travis Barker plays with them sometimes.
He recorded that last album that they put out, right?
Yeah, and the last time I saw Goldfinger, he was drumming.
He was
it was
playing.
at Back to the Beach. And, yeah, Travis is, like, sometimes in the band. And Mike Herrera from MXPX is in Goldfinger
Yes,
now.
he was the one who was playing bass, and I totally that slipped my mind until just now.
So it is
but
like a super group of sorts, but it's also Goldfinger, you know. And Real Big Fish is the same. Aaron is the only guy left from the 90s. Less Than Jake is all the original members.
Right.
Has been for 20-something years. Like, they have, I think their sax player is the new guy. He's been in the band for 25 years or something. But, yeah, that's a common thing.
They just can't make enough money to keep themselves gainfully employed over that many years doing it anymore, can they?
No, and if you're doing it as a hobby, you know, that's great when you're 18 to 25 years old. But then when you got, like, a wife and kids and a mortgage, all of a sudden your hobby takes up so much time and you really got to do that other job or...
Right.
You know, or if you're in a ska band and you're one of 8 people, but you could join this other band and be one of 3 people, play the same show, make the same money, except instead of splitting it 8 ways, you split it 3 ways.
Why not?
I'm going to take that deal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's and I love the way that you that you guys touched on that in the documentary too, because he also touched on the fact that they'd slam like 8 bands onto one bill, and then you got 8 bands dividing their trap 8 ways, and it's like nobody has any money to even cover a drink at the end of the night. And you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I think most people aren't making the music solely for the money, but it's a nice little caveat to have if you can turn that into a job. Like when Aaron said, I walked out of Subway.
Yeah.
I dreamed that story would one day happen to me. Still hasn't. Still having that dream, but love the fact that he just was like, I'm out. I'm a rock star now. You know, it's
way premature though.
Yeah. He's
but I like the attitude.
Right. Said he was broke for about a year, right? Everybody's been through that. You could do it. Just leave your job. Tell them you're going to be a rock star now. It's the best way to do it. Break your name tag in half if you have one. Throw it on the floor. I worked at a Subway, so I can relate. There's no reason to stay there. In fact, I just read an article today that their tuna was tested and there was no tuna. So, yeah, private lab test. We don't need to get into that.
It's all dolphin.
Another thing that I have to touch on just because I thought was hilarious. I've always loved, I've seen the Mighty Mighty Bosstones probably 5 or 6 times, mostly at Warped Tours. And one thing about a Warped Tour is it was always during the summer. I grew up in Northeast Oregon, so I used to go to the Boise Warped Tour, which a lot of times would either kick off the tour or end it. And I saw Mighty Mighty Bosstones in like 107-degree weather, all in their suits, moving as much as they'd moved on any other show. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were dragging people out of this pit for heat stroke left and right, and they had a guy in the Mighty Mighty Bosstones in a 3-piece suit that only danced. He didn't play any instruments. Mm-hmm. And I always wondered, until your documentary, what the story was behind that guy. And it turns out he just kind of like accidentally joined the Mighty Mighty Bosstones and then just made it his job to kick ass on stage.
Yep.
That's amazing. That's little stories like that.
Still doing it.
Yeah.
It's now, I mean, for those guys, it's like 35, 40 years they've been playing, and he's been in the band since almost the very beginning, does not play an instrument, does not sing, only dances.
Just dances. And he dances the hell out of that stage, too.
Yeah.
There's a bare spot below where that guy's at. I know it. And, you know, an equally paid member, too, of the band. Like, that's amazing. Something else that you guys touch on in the, well, I don't know if you touch on equally paid, but, like, just a full member, like, considered part of the roster. Mm-hmm. So cool. So, not to switch directions too hard on you, but I do want to talk about your career in music because it has been much more decorated than we've even got to. You played in a band, I believe it was in Baltimore, called Party Like It's, right? Mm-hmm. And I was checking out some of the social media and stuff like that. You guys were playing before like Baltimore Ravens games, and you were doing all sorts of cool stuff. Tell me a little bit about them.
Yeah, that was, like I said earlier, we were talking about the Christmas show. You know, as the internet developed and like YouTube became a thing, and I was still playing in a bunch of ska bands and rock bands and doing music. I was still well into my 30s trying to make it as a musician. Mm-hmm. I was like, I seem old, but I look young. I think I can still. But I was playing an Elvis tribute show with a sax player from my other ska band. We were the horn section for like a legit Elvis tribute. Like, you had a full horn section and backup singers, and the guy looked the part, and it was great.
That's awesome.
And we were on the bus, and I don't remember why there was a bus. It was this Elvis event, and they bussed all the musicians to the event.
Oh.
So we were sitting on this bus, and I was like, talking to Morgan was the sax player's name. I was like, why can't we have like a Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, but it's ska? Like, we could do pop songs, we could do old songs, we could do whatever. And we know all the people, we know the Pie Tasters and all these other local DC ska bands. And we're like, we could piece something together, and we could do recordings, and we could do YouTube videos. And I think people would really dig that. And he was like, yeah, sure, I'm in. And we went and played that Elvis show, and I started calling up people who I knew were either in ska bands or into ska bands. And I'm like, what if we do this thing? It's not going to be a huge commitment. We're definitely not going to play shows. It's just, we'll do this for YouTube and for whatever. And we got, bass player from the Pie Tasters and these other great horn players. And we put this band together, and we did a few recordings. We did a few YouTube videos, and it got pretty popular, at least where we were living. And then we started playing like a few live things, but we only knew 5-6 songs or so. We had done these arrangements of like Kesha songs and, other pop songs. And DC has this big cover band scene, which just means there's this desire for live music, but nobody cares about your original songs.
Okay.
And so all the bars in DC have cover bands, and it's usually you play 4 hours of just, if you're an 80s band, you play 80s music, 4 hours, 2 breaks, 3 sets.
Wow.
It's a very standardized thing, but they make good money. And when we got our singer, Kathy, she had been playing in some of these working cover bands, and she kind of brought us into this world. So we just started learning anything that could be a ska song. So we learned all the 90s hits, the Real Big Fish, the Boss Tones, the Goldfinger, the Rancid, everything. And we did ska covers of like anything we could think of that would work, that would be passable. Yeah. And we started playing these bar shows, 4-hour gigs, high energy, like 90s ska band thing. But
I bet you were in great shape. Yeah.
It was in good shape. We were also drinking a lot. Because you make good money, but you also drink for free for 4 hours at a bar.
Yeah, it's hard to stay away from, I imagine.
Yeah, and we just started doing it. And I think at the peak of that band, we were playing, 2 shows a weekend, every weekend, and pulling in some decent money and the occasional wedding. And we were hooked in with the sports bookers. We did play some football games, which is fun. They put you on a stage, like, as people are entering. The cheerleaders come out and do dances while you're playing. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
That's fun. We played the NHL, the Winter Classic.
Oh, that's the one that's outside, right?
Yeah, and that was in D.C. because the Capitals were in it. And technically, because of the order of events, we opened for Billy Idol.
Oh, wow.
he was actually playing the thing, and we were, again, the band you hear as you're walking up. But we stopped, and it's like White Wedding.
That's awesome.
And that was great. And then I had to leave that band because I moved back to Oregon. They're still playing, the occasional cover gig, but they're not. They started some other bands. They started a 2000s band that I think is very successful because nostalgia keeps creeping forward.
Yeah, it does.
90s is now forever ago, and we're old people. But after I left, I moved back to Oregon, and our YouTube videos kept getting all this traction, and somebody reached out to the band and said, hey, we're doing this reality show for cover bands. We really think you should enter this competition. And so I had already moved, but I was able to record my trumpet parts and like piece together video, like, you guys film this there and I'll film this here and we'll cut it together. And we did a cover for this reality show competition, and they were like, you're in, you're going to be on this show. And so I've already left. I haven't been playing in the band for 6 months, but we're going to be on TV.
That's
so,
awesome.
Of course, I'll drop everything and we'll do this thing. And it was a cover band competition produced by YouTube, which is how they found us, because we had millions of views on some of these cover things. And it was called Best Cover Ever. And each episode would be like a famous band judging covers of their songs. Like there's a Katy Perry episode.
Oh, wow.
There's a Jason Derulo episode. It was a cool show. Our episode was the Backstreet Boys. So we did a Backstreet Boys cover. And it was down to us and another group, and they flew us all to L.A., put us up, and we're playing. The host was Ludacris.
Oh, wow.
So he's like,
some big
talking to
names.
us, and we're playing a Backstreet Boys song for the Backstreet Boys, and we did this whole thing. It was like a 2-day shoot, and we did a reality show with this band. It was like the coolest music thing I had ever done. And then about 6 months later, they're like, okay, the show's coming out. You guys are going to promote it. And the episode started airing. The Katy Perry one comes out, the blah, 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 blah. And the week before ours was supposed to air, this was kind of at the height of the Me Too era, some news came out about one of the Backstreet Boys. And I don't even remember what happened and what the accusation was, but it has since glossed over. The Backstreet Boys are fine. Nobody's canceled. But in that moment, the sponsors pulled the episode. So our episode never aired. No one has ever seen.
Dude.
All I have are these stories that I once played trumpet. And the prize was, if you win, which I can tell the world we won this reality show that no one will ever see. But if you win, you get to perform with the group. So the person who won, like you can go on YouTube and watch the Jason Derulo episode. The person who won gets to do a duet with Jason Derulo. But what we got to do was do a ska cover of the Tell Me Why You Ain't Nothing But a Honey.
Yeah,
I Want It That Way.
Okay, there you go.
A ska cover that we arranged with a full like ska punk band with the Backstreet Boys.
That's awesome.
On stage, they filmed it with like 8 cameras, and it was rad. And that like exists somewhere, and I'll never get a copy. But that was kind of the peak of that band, and then I stopped participating. Like, they're still fine, but when that didn't come out, I was so bummed.
Oh, I imagine, man. Just takes a wind out of your sails. And yeah, you're right. Backstreet Boys are even back in the news. They just they formed a 2-and-2 supergroup with NSYNC called Backsync. So
yes, I'm also on TikTok.
Yeah,
I'm aware. #boyband challenge.
Yeah, it's something else, man. Well, yeah, that's awesome. I was, I just was kind of following you guys on social media. Obviously, went back and did some research. I hope that someday that tape surfaces so at least you can see it, because if anybody deserves to, you definitely do. Especially, I don't know if this will relate at all, but we played in a couple Battle of the Bands back when I was in college, one out in Florence, and there was no other bands at this place that were worthy of even being on the stage. They were like a bunch of high school kids. They were all new. They didn't have full sets. Grinch came out there, but Grinch, like they were just barely Grinch at the time. Like they had just gotten started, and we were pretty established. We've been playing a lot of shows. We went to the website a week after because we were very confident that we had won the prize, which was just a couple $100, like a little trophy. And they had our picture in the winner slot with the high school band's name next to it. And then in last place was the high school band's picture with our name next to it. And no. I called them and I'm like, hey, I think there's a little bit of a mix up. And they're like, no, that band was really good. We gave it to the right people. And I'm like, you guys are mixed up because I hated to say it, but I knew that we were the best band there that day. It kind of sounds like what you knew as far as your reality show is concerned. Like you won, hands down. You did the best job.
We did our best.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you also played, and I've already had you for an hour, so we're going to wrap this up really quick, but I have to. The nostalgia in me has to do this one thing. You played in a band called Alter Ego here in Eugene for many years. Awesome punk band. You had a drummer, phenomenal. Remind me of his name.
Our our drummer for most of the time was Now Hirota.
Yes, Now.
My Japanese friend.
And how's he doing, man? That guy, as a young college kid, I looked up to him a lot. I just thought that he was the most kick-ass punk drummer around.
He is still kick-ass. He's got 3 kids. He lives in Tokyo. He runs his dad's old business and several other businesses. He's like a successful Japanese businessman.
That's awesome.
With some kids, but he's still... I was over there a few years ago now, but for another documentary project, and his company was having like their 1-year anniversary party, and he and his brother got out there and did like a drum off, because his brother's also a great drummer.
Really?
And it was like cool businessman dude, but also still a punk rock drummer. It was pretty sweet.
Well, I have something else a little nostalgic here. This is actually the drum head that I was on the front of my Pearl kit when I was playing with you guys. I sold that drum kit, unfortunately. That was the kit that was recorded for One Point Star's album. But this drum head, I would never let it go because it has some wonderful things. We talked about Eugene Rock Music. Here's a sticker from EugeneRockMusic.com. We talked about Alter Ego. That's Taylor's band sticker right there. And we also mentioned Ray Mastro Giovanni, which is this Mastro 3 right here. Oh, yeah. And I'll get that a little closer to you so you can take a look.
Oh, man.
And there's something to somebody that has a nostalgia streak in them. Like, that's always been, I keep pictures, I keep everything I can, little trinkets, just the stuff that you gave me, the promotional items from your movie will go into my collection that will never, it'll never be thrown away. And I knew that you would probably be into seeing something like that with some of your old stickers. I mean, that's a lot of your old work right there, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think I designed these 1 Point Star stickers.
You did?
I know I ordered them because I had this hookup for these cheap paper stickers, which 20 years later, they have held up.
They really have.
Like, I did these for a lot of bands, and I have a bunch. And aside from here, you can see the Eugene Rock Music one is a little scuffed off because they're paper. But if you don't scuff them, they hold up really well. But I for sure got those done, and they were packaging labels like for meat.
Oh, really?
And I had figured out, because we were, I don't know where you were at, but when I was in college, I had no money.
None.
I was dirt poor, but I also played in bands, and that's where the DIY comes from. Like, we're going to make our own T-shirts so that we can have T-shirts. We can't afford to get T-shirts made. We can't afford stickers, but I found this like meat packaging company that's like, oh, the paper labels, those are less than a penny. If you order, 500,
right?
It's like for $5. Yeah, we'll take thousands. Right. And we made thousands of these dumb paper stickers, and we're just tossing them out. But that was where it came from, was from just a lack of resources.
Yeah,
like we want to do cool stuff. We look up to all these bands. Less Than Jake, they had all the cool merchandise and all the awesome stuff. All the bands that came through had all this awesome stuff. We couldn't afford it, and that's why I got into recording. I couldn't afford studio time. So I would record other bands, and then you guys would give me like, I don't know, $100. I would take that to buy a microphone so that we could do another recording.
Right.
Like I remember for your record, I didn't have enough microphones to record a drum set.
Yeah, we had to piecemeal it together. I remember that.
Yeah, and I took, like, you guys paid me half up front, and I bought the microphones that we used. Like, I didn't make any money, but I had those microphones. After, and that was how we would do it. Like,
do you remember how we deadened the room? We hung a mattress in the window and then duct taped a bunch of pillows around it because we had that big picture window right in the front where we needed to record drums.
Yeah, that tracks.
I mean, I actually... I got one. I pulled one off because I wanted to play it for you, and
oh no.
I'm not going to. I'm not tooting my own horn here as much as I'm tooting Taylor's horn, because not only did you record and produce this track, but you also joined us for it on vocals, because as the only 5-piece punk band in the world that didn't have 2 people that would sing, 1 Point Star needed a little help, and when we record, and I actually have the copy of the recorded with our lead singer Steve-O just doing it all himself. Way better idea to have you fill in the backup vocals, because the contrast definitely built it. The song's called Better Than Sex, and this is some of Taylor Morden's very early work, accompanied by my old band 1 Point Star. So there you have it, just a little bit of a song called Better Than Sex by an old band called 1 Point Star that used to exist and buy as many paper stickers as we could get our hands on.
Oh, man. I have tears in my eyes.
Do you really?
Nostalgia tears. That happens to me a lot. It happened to me the other day. I drove by the Gateway Mall, and it's not a mall anymore, and I got these stupid tears in my eyes. But, like, I just had a vivid memory. It might have been at the Wow Hall, but I think I only did that song with you guys live once. Mm-hmm. Was it at the Wow Hall?
It was at the Wow Hall, yes, sir.
And I could just, like, hearing it just brought me back to that time, and what a great time.
That was a lot of fun, man. We had a lot of fun. Sometimes I get a little bit scolded for being as nostalgic about my band because while I thought, and apologies forever if I ever came off as a dick, because I always thought that band was going to go somewhere, and I treated it like it was.
We all did.
Yeah. And, I always play it for people because I'm really proud of it. I think that you, for the money that we paid you, which was pennies on the dollar, you produced a wonderful album for us, and I'm going to have it with me for the rest of my life, and I get to listen to it. I mean, these guys that were in this band are now my lifelong friends. They were all in my wedding. We actually played a set at my wedding of cover songs that we'd picked out specifically for it, and
nice.
It means so much to me. Not only that this happened and you did this for us and made it sound as good as it sounds, but that you actually came and wanted to do this podcast with me, because this is like my next adventure in life. And I really appreciate you joining me in the Man Room today, dude. I'm starting to get a little bit choked up too, because I was super excited to talk to you. You've had so much success, and you've done so many great things. What you were involved with me is just a tiny little blip on the radar, but I think it was really awesome, and I'm just super glad to hear that you're back in Eugene, and I can't wait to see what you come up with next, dude.
Thank you so much. It's been awesome catching up with you. I feel like podcasts are now like the only reason anyone has in-depth conversations anymore, and it's so, like, I was excited when you reached out because, like, we knew each other 20 years ago, and we haven't had a chance to catch up. I've only been back in town for a few weeks, but, like, those were what I refer to as the good old days,
Yep.
Playing in bands, no responsibility, no money, and just, like, music every day and stupid paper stickers and flyers everywhere. And why don't we just do a Christmas show? And why don't we do this and that and the Wow Hall and just all those things? There are very few people in the world that I can just sit and talk to about those times that will get it, and you're one of those people. So
for sure, man.
Thanks for having me over.
Hey, no problem. Love to have you back another time. We do one of these each week, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you in the Man Room. Taylor Morden, everybody, thank you so much.
Peace.
Thanks for listening. And transmission.